Hi, I'm Daniel, and this is Dan from UK Bike Fit, and this is Talk It Out. Now, you're either watching us on YouTube, or you tell me now, Dan, people are listening on Spotify.
Yeah, hopefully. If I can work out how to upload them to Spotify, they will be on Spotify.
Brilliant. So if you're on YouTube, you need to hit that subscribe button, and if you're on Spotify, rate the show. Is that what you do?
We're so amateur, aren't we? I don't know.
I think it is. Give us 5 stars.
Tell your mates.
Yeah, so on the Talk It Out show, we talk about all things like bike and bike fit and triathlon related. But today, we're talking about a new bike because if you're in the cycling space and on the internet, you've probably seen it, right? That bike is, Dan, I'll give you a drum roll.
The Colnago Y1Rs.
Which is a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, really catchy name. But the reason it's sort of... There's a lot of content on it. Obviously, this is an aero bike from Colnago, so Colnago haven't really been known for their aero bikes or have done a lot of aero bikes, and before this bike, they certainly didn't have an aero bike in their range. This is their aero bike that they've developed. Obviously, UAE, the World Tour team, are sponsored by Colnago, so this will be the bike that Tadej Pogacar's riding some of the time. But the other reason it's got a lot of attention is because it looks a bit wild compared to basically every other bike. The design of it has gone is a bit different, and it's split opinion online by the looks of it. Some people are shouting at it, calling it ugly, and some people really love it. And so, yeah, we're going to dig into it, and we're going to give our take on it. And I'm going to come at it from a bike fitter's point of view as well, and talk a little bit about the geometry and why they've done what they've done.
Yeah. I mean, firstly, from a marketing point of view, like, that's brilliant, right? People are talking about it, whether they hate it or love it. Very often new things you don't like at first, and then they grow on you. So there's certainly a lot of people in the bike racing world who will all have seen a picture of this bike. I think they sort of slyly leaked it the week before the launch just to drive some interest, and then they followed up very quickly with, oh, here's the full-on launch. Here it is at our team camp. Here's Dave Arthur at the team camp, and so on. Like, it seemed very well orchestrated. But I guess my difficulty with this sort of a bike is I don't feel very interested in it. I'm really interested in cycling and I'm really interested in bikes, but because it's so expensive, really, so it's like 16,000 euros, I'm finding it hard to get excited about. But there is a fair bit to be excited about, right?
There is. I don't feel like, although people are going to prove me wrong, I don't feel like this is a bike that many people will buy as a recreational, as an amateur cyclist. It feels like a bike that has been made. I suppose this is true for every bike though now, isn't it? That the bike has been made specifically for one reason, is for the pros, for the World Tour, and they have made it out and out aero to save as many watts as possible, to go as fast as possible in a straight line. That's basically why they've done it. Personally, I don't think this is a bike that many people should buy as an amateur or recreational cyclist. I definitely think it's the aero gains that they're claiming are not useful for most riders and most people. We'll talk about that a bit later on. But I just don't feel like this is a bike that's been made for the mass market. It obviously isn't, because the price of it is absolutely extortionate. And the gains and the reason it's been made aren't going to be useful in the real world.
If we take this really small slice of the cycling world that we're in Derbyshire in the UK, we see local crit racers, we see local clubs and teams, and if we look at what bikes they're riding, I don't see very many, oh, this is the Aero CFR or the S-Works SL8. What we see lots of is, oh, it's the Aero CFSL, or it's the Specialized SL8. It's that, yeah, cool, you've seen that top tier bike out there, but the majority of people, I know I can't speak for everybody, aren't buying that top tier bike. If the average salary in the UK at the minute is what, about £32,000 a year, the average person is not spending half of that on a bike. Maybe they are, I don't know, but so that's why I feel like when you look at that Colnago, you think, right, what's going to be a lower spec on a lower tier bike? Well, the cockpit's all fancy and, you know, swooping and all of that. So if that isn't there on the lower tier, well, you're not going to buy it. And then surely the geometry is taken into account, that sort of lower because the bars are so high. I don't know, you know more about that than me, but I feel like what is the lower tier option from that? And I feel like it's going to lose the bits that people are actually interested in it for. Yeah,
or there just isn't going to be one. But I think another reason is, and maybe this is the future, maybe this is where in the next few years we're going to see more of this, but going back a few years, Specialized Venge disappeared, and then the Tarmac sort of took over, and the claims were stated that the Tarmac was just as aero as the Venge, so you don't need the Venge, so we got rid of it. Trek Madone less aero now, more skinny, a bit more lightweight. There's a lot of do-it-all bikes, whereas this is an out-and-out aero bike. Yes, it's a bit heavier, although 7.5 kilos I think it's quoted as, which isn't that heavy really, but it's a bit heavier. It's not a lightweight bike. It's not an all-rounder. This is made for one purpose and one purpose only. And I feel like, yeah, 6-7 years ago, Venge disappeared. Recently, the Madone's disappeared, as it was. The out-and-out aero bikes were disappearing, and in place of all of these all-rounders, like the new Tarmac and the new Amonda, like there's a lot of bikes that are claimed to do it all, whereas this is going back to that full aero bike. So are we going to see more brands doing this sort of thing where they're going, right, we're going to make a full aero bike and then we're going to make our all-rounder and make it really light, like Scott have done with the new Addict?
Yeah, which is actually light though.
Actually light, under 6 kilos, under 6 kilos in the top spec, isn't it? So are we going to see more of that differentiation rather than all-rounders that we've seen in the last few years? And if so, then you can look at this bike and go, well, this might be the future, and this might be the next few years that we're going to see a lot of other brands bringing out full aero bikes again, and then therefore we're going to see more of them at local crits and out and about on your Sunday ride.
Yeah. Should we talk about some numbers? So the numbers that I've seen batted around about this, and these are legit. So 7.45 kilos is the weight of the bike in the top spec. So in the UAE team spec, it's just under 7.5 kilos. However, that's not, when you look at like Pogacar's bike, he's got carbon tie chain rings, he's got little trick bits, people say he's got a Darimo seat post and all those sorts of things. Obviously they're not coming on that top spec bike, so I don't doubt that they can get that down to close to 6.8 kilos being the UCI weight limit. And I don't know, I feel like that's really good, but if you look at the SL8 S-Works Tarmac that's on the UCI weight limit in the top spec without the custom bits, it doesn't seem that competitive, but as you say, aero. So aero numbers, how aero is it? Well, Colnago say that it is frame only, it's 1 watt faster than the fastest competitor, and they don't tell you what the fastest competitor is, so you can only assume it's maybe the Amonda or the S5 or what the aero bikes are.
Aero bike, basically.
Yeah, which, I mean, to us 1 watt isn't, I'm not scratching out for 1 watt.
And this is we've tested this at 50 kph.
Yeah, and at 50 kph in a wind tunnel, you're not throwing the bike around. If you think about Cavendish, winning or losing by an inch, it is important then when they're doing 60, 70 kph, but they're throwing the bikes around. I don't think it's been tested like that. So to me, I sort of glaze over with all those numbers because I think who's presenting the numbers to you? The brand who's trying to sell you the thing. So they're always going to pitch it in a way that is going to make you want to buy it. I'm not always against that because you want to buy a bike, right? But I just don't think it matters. When am I doing 50 kph down a hill on the brakes? That's the only time I'm really doing it. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't buy the newest Aero cool bike? No, but I don't know. Do you think if you look at it as this is just an aero bike, not the most aero bike, is it competitive? Is it the sort of bike you'd be seeing in here or not, do you think?
No, I don't. Well, this is it. So are people buying aero bikes for the aero, or are they buying them because they look nice? Like they like the deep section tubes, they like the integrated bars, flat top bars and all the rest of it. So if you're buying an aero bike for looks, then barring the weird frame shape, which we'll come to, this ticks all the boxes in terms of looks, then yeah, you're going to see them out on the road. If you're buying an aero bike for the aero gains, then I don't think you're going to, like you said, I don't think you're going to care about how many watts you save at 50k and out per kph. They also tested it against the V4R, their current bike, which they'll still be using, the UAE in the World Tour. They'll still be using that bike for stages. I think they will, yeah. They've got to, because I think, I don't know if they can get this down to what's the benefit? But I think they will.
Colnago are going to want to sell bikes.
Yeah, but they're still going to want to sell the other one. They're not going to want to do what Trek did, where they brought out their new Madone, which basically through all of their marketing said, well, if you buy it, you don't need the Amonda anymore. They're basically underselling their other bike, saying that this bike does it all. So they've completely sort of pushed their other bike to the side.
Trek stopped selling it, didn't they? Whereas Colnago is still retailing the V4S.
Exactly. So they did also test it against that and claim that the frontal area of the bike, just the frontal area, reduced by 19%, which is probably the most important part in terms of aerodynamics, that front third of the bike, the thing that's hitting the wind most. But again, they've tested it against that because they know it's not an aero bike and it was never claimed to be, so they can sort of inflate the numbers, I feel. But going back to what you said, who cares about that when you're riding in the...
If I say on a ride, oh, this bike's got 19% less frontal area, I know what people are going to say to me. Like, well,
yeah.
So what?
Yeah. So I think an aero bike is more about looks. Like, some people just love the look of an aero bike and having the wheels tucked into the frame and just having it all very neat and compact, and it does look good. I personally like the look of the frame. I like the look of the bike. I like the bayonet fork system on the front. I like the bars, how they flick up. Cervelo were obviously onto something when they started that with their S5. I do like the look of this bike, and I don't mind the seat post either. Yeah.
If you rock up to a cafe on that, you're turning heads, aren't you? People are asking you about it. People are talking about it. It is if you want to be that's that guy who's got one of, that's the bike to buy, isn't it? I know even the SL8s now aren't really turning heads anymore, are they? So
no, and it's like one of the arguments with the Tarmac and other of those kinds of bikes is, a lot of people have said this, they all look the same. Like, bikes all look the same nowadays. They're all coming out with drop stays and this sort of geometry and this sort of shape, and they want something that looks a bit different, and this definitely does that. Again, for the price, it's individual, but it does definitely tick a box and say, look, we're doing something different. This is new. This is potentially the future of how a bike's going to look for the next few years, and we're the first to do it.
Okay, so bike fitting head-on done. I know you have that on all the time because you're a bike fitter, but what are your thoughts about, if somebody comes into you with one of these, are you thinking, oh no, or are you thinking, oh, that looks quite adjustable? What are your thoughts?
Although joked about having your bike fitted on all the time. When a bike comes out, I do look at it and think, how much of a nightmare is that going to be?
Who's the cockpit options?
Yes,
two widths.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, although there is options going onto the cockpit. There is options where they mix a long stem with narrow bars, which is nice because you don't get that all the time.
I would hope so for 16,000 euros, but
you'd be like other brands of cockpit. If you go for a long stem, you have to have really wide bars. You can't have the long and narrow. Yeah. Ridiculous. Anyway, so at least there's that. Yeah. When this did come out, I did have a look and think, right, if we got one of these in the studio, how much of a ball ache is it going to be to work on? The one thing that I can see being a problem is the seat post. You're going to have to be really specific with this when you fit it and set up your saddle height. Basically, if you've not seen the bike, go and have a look at it online. But the seat tube is stepped. It's at like 2 different steps with an adjoining diagonal part. It's not your standard straight seat post, seat tube. So what that means is you cannot lower your seat post into the frame as much as you can on a normal bike with a normal seat tube. Colnago have said that once you've cut the seat post to your fit that you want to get your saddle height, you've got 1.5 centimeters of adjustment. So, which isn't a lot.
No.
In
if you're changing pedal systems or something.
Yeah, crank lengths. Yeah. You could change your crank lengths by 1 centimeter easy, and that means you've got to lift your saddle up, and you might not be able to once it's been cut. So you're going to have to be really precise with your fit when you buy one of these. You need to know your numbers to the exact millimeter before you go and pull the trigger on one, or at least until you go and cut the seat post.
But I'd hope surely Colnago will think about this and will perhaps offer replacement seat posts at a competitive rate. If it's 50 quid for another seat post, you might go, okay, I'll get another one while I buy this. I would imagine. So
I would be so surprised if that's the case, just based on previous brands.
So because you said we want to talk about this bike today, I've done loads of research, and the Cade Media put a podcast out today, and they've talked about the Colnago accessories range, merchandise range, and they have a hoodie up for £500. So I don't think a cheap seat post is going to be on the agenda.
No, and you're going to get no sympathy if you go to them saying, oh, I've cut the seat post, now I've changed my crank length, can I have a new post for free? No.
Why wouldn't they go to an integrated seat post, the ISP, the giant TCR did years ago? Because they have a good inch or so adjustment either way, don't they? Why wouldn't they go to that sort of thing?
Yeah. So they've got this weird frame shape for compliance reasons. Like they want to introduce a bit of compliance. I think they've also done it for Aero to keep the lower part of the seat tube attached to the rear wheel to keep that airflow close together. But to do that without having a really slack seat tube angle, you then have to have a step in it and then another bit of seat tube sticking out, basically. That top part of the seat tube is at 65 degrees, whereas a normal seat post is roughly around 73 to 75. So by having that top bit at 65, they've introduced a lot of compliance there for comfort, basically. But my argument to that is that you've gained compliance from having a 65 degree effective seat tube, but then you've got a really short seat post that's attached very high up, which then loses your compliance. So, you know, again, like I say, the aero factor comes into it with having that bottom part of the seat tube attached to the wheel. But if they're going to start singing about how much compliance there is, I'd probably take that with a pinch of salt. The effective seat tube angle, by the way, from bottom bracket up to where your saddle is going to be, is very normal compared to others. So the effective seat tube angle hasn't changed compared to other brands, but they've just introduced it in a two-stepped way. So yeah, the seat post is going to be a really tricky thing from a fit point of view, and you're going to have to be really precise when you cut that.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's a good message to tell somebody that they're going to require another seat post.
Yeah, there's going to be some awkward conversations, I think, if we start seeing a lot.
Have you not got one in here that we can just...
Maybe not, no. So yeah, there's that. And then obviously the bars and the stem, the cockpit. I don't think this is going to be too different to how we tackle integrated cockpits now. It's just going to be basically the same sort of situation. It looks very much like the Cervelo S5.
Yeah.
I don't know what the steer is going to look like, whether it's going to be a round steer or whether it's shaped. I presume it's going to be shaped and not round.
Ones I've seen, it's shaped, but they've said that the clamp is still in development, like it's not like ride ready. I think Dave Arthur did ride around the car park on one, but they weren't saying, here, jump on one, and the team aren't riding it. So I don't think it's ready.
Yeah, which doesn't fill you with confidence that they've got a solid design that's ready to go. I feel like they might have had problems with it, and they think, oh crap, we've got to launch the bike.
Well, we shouldn't put Bugatti on this to test it.
No. So we'll wait to see what that comes out with. I have to say, if they do come out with a solution like the Cervelo S5 has, that will be quite nice. It's probably a good way of doing it, where you can raise and drop the stem without having to cut a steerer tube. Still have all the problem with the cables integrated, but you have that with most bikes now. So yeah, we'll see. Jury's out on that. But again, from a performance perspective and the looks perspective, I'll just love how the bayonet type shaped fork into the frame works really well. Makes a really deep head tube and really deep forks. I just like the look of that, and it's got to be, from an aero point of view, it's probably going to be faster without getting it in a wind tunnel in here. But yeah.
And even if it isn't, you could just say it is, like everybody else does.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in my conclusion, I think cool, sort of semi-interested in it. After careful consideration, I don't think I'll be ordering one. If one comes up crashed on Facebook Marketplace, maybe.
Well, you've just bought 6 bikes recently,
Dan,
so you sell all of those.
I still couldn't afford one. How about yourself?
I like the bike.
Yeah.
I like the looks of it, and I see what they've done, and I kind of like that this is new and different, and they're changing the way that frames are designed. I think that's really good, rather than making something that's like everything else. It's not for me. I'm never going to be buying one of these. Even if it was a sensible price, I wouldn't be choosing this bike to ride, because it's not made for the type of riding I do. But like I say, if you want a bike that is different and it turns heads and it makes you stand out, this is going to be the one to get.
I think the target market for this, or definitely the top spec one, isn't somebody who's looking for their one bike. It's somebody who's already got the M1, it's already got the SL8, and it's just that's cool, I'll have one of those as well, please. So, which is fair enough, absolutely fine and cool, but it's a hard sell to get somebody to choose that over other things that are so tried and tested. It looks like they're trying too hard, in my opinion, but...
Yeah. But then, I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing over the next few years more brands bringing out either out-and-out aero bikes or just bikes that are designed in a completely wild and different way. I don't think that's a bad thing to do in terms of marketing, but also in terms of the future of bike design. I just think it's a good thing to do, to try these different things.
Well, I think this is the first bike that's been released since the UCI rule change, isn't it? That's changed the dimension thing slightly. So that's why they've been able to make it look a little bit more funky because of that.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully we start seeing some more or some different designs coming out. And I wouldn't be surprised again if you start seeing brands completely going, right, this is our aero bike and this is our lightweight bike, and the bikes sort of in between start to peter out, and we go back to that full aero bike sort of era. I like most things in cycling.
And in 4 years' time, we'll come back to the road bike as well.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we'll keep an eye out and see what happens.
Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify,
Go on YouTube.
Go on YouTube and comment. Thanks for watching.